The widow Darren Thorne stood at the edge of his freshly cleared field, watching his two young sons chase each other through the rows of winter wheat with a mixture of affection and exhaustion that had become his constant companion since Martha died. The spring planting season loomed before him like a mountain he had to climb alone, and every time he thought about how he would manage the work while keeping Owen and Samuel safe, his chest tightened with something close to panic. "Papa, can we go to the creek?" Owen called out, his 8-year-old voice bright with the kind of hope that expected disappointment. Samuel, just turned 5, echoed his brother's request with enthusiastic nodding that sent his brown curls bouncing. "Not today, boys," Darren said, though he hated the way their faces fell. "I need you both where I can see you. The field will not plow itself, and I cannot watch you if you wander off." Owen's shoulders slumped in that particular way of children who have heard the same answer too many times. Samuel's lower lip jutted out, and Darren felt the familiar guilt settle over him like a wet cloak. They were good boys, but they were still boys, full of energy and curiosity that could not be contained in the small corner of the field where he tried to keep them occupied with toys and games while he worked. The previous week, Samuel had nearly stepped on a nest of copperheads while Darren's back was turned for just a moment. The week before that, Owen had climbed the old oak by the barn and gotten stuck 15 feet up, crying until Darren abandoned his plowing to rescue him. Every day brought a new near disaster, and Darren knew he could not keep this up. Something had to change before the planting season truly began, or his crop would fail, and then what would become of them? He had asked around the settlement, of course. The other farmers' wives were already overwhelmed with their own children and households. The few unmarried women in the area had made it clear they had no interest in taking on a widower with 2 young sons, no matter how prosperous his farm might be. Darren had even considered hiring one of the traveling folk who sometimes passed through, but the stories of children going missing or being mistreated made his blood run cold. So he worked and worried, and his sons grew more restless with each passing day. That evening, as Darren prepared a simple supper of bread and stew, Owen sat at the rough-hewn table drawing pictures in the dust with his finger while Samuel played with a carved horse Darren had made him last winter. "Papa, why do you look so sad all the time?" Owen asked suddenly, his young face serious in the lamplight, Darren's hand stilled over the pot. "I am not sad, son, just tired. Mama used to say being tired and being sad look the same on your face," Owen replied, and Darren's heart clenched at the mention of Martha. She had been gone 6 months, claimed by a fever that swept through the settlement last autumn, taking the old and the unlucky in equal measure. "Your mama was a wise woman," Darren said softly, ladling stew into wooden bowls. "I miss her every day." "Me too," Owen whispered. And Samuel, though he barely remembered his mother anymore, nodded solemnly. They ate in companionable silence, and after Darren had tucked both boys into the bed they shared in the loft, he sat by the fire and stared at the flames, turning his problems over in his mind like stones. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed the sound outside, a soft shuffling near the barn that was too heavy to be a fox or raccoon. Darren grabbed the hunting knife he kept by the door and stepped out into the cool spring night. The moon was bright enough to cast shadows, and he moved quietly around the side of the house toward the barn. What he saw there made him freeze in his tracks. An orc woman knelt by the water trough, drinking deeply with cupped hands. She was tall, easily matching Darren's own height, with broad shoulders and arms that showed lean muscle even in the moonlight. Her skin was the green of new leaves, and when she lifted her head, water dripping from her chin, he could see the small tusks that protruded from her lower jaw. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and her clothes, leather and rough cloth, were travel-worn and stained. She saw him the same moment he saw her, and they both went still as deer who had scented a predator. Darren knew what he was supposed to do. Orcs were dangerous, everyone said so. They raided villages, killed travelers, took what they wanted without regard for human life. He should run back into the house, bar the door, protect his sons. But this orc woman did not look dangerous. She looked exhausted and wary, her dark eyes watching him with the kind of careful attention of someone who expected violence and was already planning how to avoid it. She was injured too, he noticed. Her left arm hung at an odd angle, and there was dried blood on her shirt. "I mean no harm," she said, her voice deep and rough with thirst. "I will leave." She started to rise, wincing as the movement jarred her injured arm, and something in Darren made a decision before his mind had fully caught up. "Wait," he heard himself say. The orc woman froze, half standing, her entire body tense. "You are hurt." "It is nothing," she said, but her pallor, visible even through her green skin, told a different story. "It does not look like nothing," Darren replied. He lowered his knife, a gesture he hoped she would read as peaceful. "When did you last eat?" The orc woman stared at him as though he had sprouted a second head. "Why do you ask?" "Because you are drinking from my horse trough like you have not seen water in days, and you look like a strong wind would knock you over," Darren said bluntly. "I am not in the habit of turning away those in need, regardless of their kind. Your kind has turned me away from every settlement between here and the mountains," the orc woman said bitterly. "Why should you be different?" "Maybe I am stupid," Darren said with a shrug. "Or maybe I just believe that judging someone by what they are rather than who they are is a fool's game. Come inside. Let me look at that arm." The orc woman shook her head slowly. "If your neighbors see me here, they will burn your farm to the ground with you in it. Humans do not help orcs." "My neighbors are 3 miles away in any direction," Darren replied. "And I am a grown man who can make his own choices about who I help. Now, are you coming inside, or are you going to stand there bleeding until you fall over?" For a long moment, she simply looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she nodded. Darren led her into the house, acutely aware of how small and cramped it must seem to someone who likely spent most of their time in the open. He gestured to the chair nearest the fire and stoked the coals back to life while the orc woman settled herself gingerly, cradling her injured arm. "My name is Darren Thorne," he said, pulling out the box of medical supplies Martha had always kept well stocked. "What do I call you?" "Greshka," the orc woman replied after a pause. "Of the Stonefang clan, or I was before they cast me out." Darren glanced up sharply. "Cast out? Why?" Greshka's laugh was bitter. "Because I refused to kill a human child during a raid. In my clan, mercy is weakness, and weakness is not tolerated." The words settled into the quiet room like stones dropping into still water. Darren thought of Owen and Samuel sleeping upstairs, imagined this woman standing between them and death, and felt something shift in his chest. "Then they are fools," he said simply, turning his attention to her arm. "This is going to hurt. The bone is broken and it has set badly. I will need to reset it." Greshka's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Do what you must." Darren had set bones before, mostly for livestock, but once for a neighbor who had fallen from his roof. He worked as quickly and carefully as he could, and though Greshka's face went pale and sweat beaded on her forehead, she did not cry out. When he had splinted the arm and wrapped it securely, he sat back with a sigh. "You should rest here tonight," he said. "In the morning, you can decide where you want to go." "I have nowhere to go," Greshka said quietly. "No clan will take an exile, and humans would sooner see me dead than give me shelter." "Then stay here," Darren said, the words tumbling out before he had fully thought them through. At least until you heal. Greshka's eyes widened. You do not know what you are offering. If anyone discovers you are harboring an orc, they will not discover anything if you stay out of sight, Darren interrupted. My farm is isolated and I do not get many visitors, especially during planting season. Why would you do this? Greshka asked, her voice rough with something that might have been emotion. You do not know me. I could kill you in your sleep and take everything you have. Darren met her gaze steadily. You could have killed me outside when I had my back turned, but you did not. You could have raided my farm weeks ago when you must have first spotted it, but you did not. I think you are a good person in a bad situation, and I think maybe we can help each other. Help each other how? Greshka asked warily. I have 2 young sons, Darren said, warming to the idea now that he had spoken it aloud. Their mother died last autumn, and I am trying to run this farm alone while keeping them safe and cared for. I need someone to watch them while I work the fields, someone I can trust not to let them wander into danger. In exchange, I can offer you food, shelter, and safety until you decide what you want to do next. Greshka stared at him for a long moment, her expression cycling through disbelief, suspicion, and finally, cautious hope. You would trust me with your children. You defied your entire clan to save a human child, Darren replied. Yes, I would trust you with my children. Tears glistened in Greshka's dark eyes, and she looked away quickly, as though ashamed of the display of emotion. I do not know how to care for human children. They are not so different from orc children, I imagine, Darren said with a small smile. They need food, attention, and someone to keep them from doing foolish things that will get them hurt. I think you can manage that. Greshka nodded slowly. I will try. But if your sons fear me, or if this arrangement puts you in danger, I will leave immediately. Fair enough, Darren agreed. He stood and pulled down a blanket from the shelf. You can sleep by the fire tonight. Tomorrow, I will introduce you to Owen and Samuel. As Greshka settled onto the floor with the blanket wrapped around her shoulders, Darren banked the fire and headed toward the ladder to the loft. He paused with one foot on the lowest rung. Greshka. Yes. Thank you for saving that child. Whoever they were, whatever happened, you did the right thing. In the dim light, he saw her nod, and he climbed up to check on his sleeping sons, wondering what he had just set in motion and whether his neighbors would ever forgive him if they found out. Morning came with the sound of Samuel's excited voice floating down from the loft. Papa, Papa, there is someone sleeping by the fire. Darren groaned and rolled over, realizing he had overslept. Sunlight streamed through the small window, bright and insistent, and he could hear Owen's quieter voice asking questions. He descended the ladder quickly to find both boys peering over the edge of the loft at Greshka, who had woken and was sitting up, looking uncertain and slightly alarmed at being watched by 2 small humans. Boys, come down here, Darren said, and they scrambled down the ladder with the fearlessness of youth. He positioned himself between them and Greshka, not because he feared she would hurt them, but because he wanted to control the introduction. Owen, Samuel, this is Greshka. She's going to be staying with us for a while to help around the farm. Samuel's eyes were wide as saucers. She is green, he said with the blunt honesty of a 5-year-old. Yes, she is, Darren agreed calmly. Greshka is an orc. Have you boys ever met an orc before? Both boys shook their heads, their gazes locked on Greshka with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Are you going to eat us? Owen asked, and Darren winced at the question even as he understood where it came from. The stories told about orcs were rarely kind, but Greshka did not seem offended. Instead, she looked directly at Owen and spoke with grave seriousness. No, I am not going to eat you. Orcs do not eat people no matter what the stories say. We eat meat and vegetables and bread just like humans do." "Oh," Owen said, visibly relieved. "That is good." Samuel, emboldened by his brother's question, stepped closer. "Why are your teeth so big?" "Samuel, that is rude," Darren started, but Greshka held up her good hand. "It is a fair question," she said. She opened her mouth slightly to show her tusks more clearly. "These are tusks, and all orcs have them. They help us eat tough food and defend ourselves if we need to. Your papa has something similar, see?" She pointed to Darren's canine teeth. "His are just smaller." Samuel considered this, then nodded as though it made perfect sense. "Can I touch them?" "Samuel," Darren said, mortified, but Greshka was already smiling, a genuine expression that softened her entire face. "Maybe when we know each other better," she said kindly. "For now, how about you tell me your names properly?" "I am Owen Thorne, and I am 8 years old," Owen said with the formality of a child trying to make a good impression. "This is my brother Samuel. He is 5, and he asks a lot of questions." "I like questions," Greshka replied. "Questions mean you are curious, and curious people learn more about the world." Samuel beamed at this, and just like that, Darren could see the wariness in his sons beginning to dissolve. Children, he reflected, were often wiser than adults when it came to judging character. They had not yet learned to hate based on stories and fear. "Greshka has a hurt arm," Darren explained, "so she is going to rest and get better. While she does that, she has agreed to watch over you two while I work in the fields. That means you need to listen to her just like you would listen to me. Understood?" "Yes, Papa," both boys chorused. "Good. Now, who wants to help me make breakfast?" The morning passed in a strange but pleasant blur. Darren cooked eggs and porridge while Owen set the table and Samuel fetched water from the well. Greshka sat quietly, watching the domestic scene with an expression Darren could not quite read. When he set a bowl in front of her, she looked up at him with something like wonder. "You are feeding me at your table," she said softly. "With your children." "Where else would you eat?" Darren asked, genuinely confused. "Most humans would make me eat outside if they fed me at all," Greshka replied. "Or they would throw scraps like I was a dog." Darren felt a flash of anger at the cruelty she described, but he kept his voice level. "Well, I am not most humans, and in this house, everyone eats together." They ate breakfast with the boys peppering Greshka with questions about orcs, where she came from, and whether she knew how to fight. Greshka answered patiently, editing her responses to be appropriate for young ears but never talking down to them. Darren found himself relaxing as he watched her interact with his sons, seeing the gentleness beneath her warrior's exterior. After breakfast, Darren prepared to head out to the fields. He knelt down to eye level with his sons. "I need you both to stay with Greshka today. No wandering off, no going to the creek without permission, and no climbing trees. Can you do that?" "Yes, Papa," Owen said. "We will be good," Samuel added. Darren turned to Greshka. "If you need anything, or if anything happens, ring the bell by the door. I will hear it and come running." Greshka nodded, her expression serious. "I will keep them safe." "I know you will," Darren said, and he meant it. He spent the morning plowing the north field, and for the first time in months, he could focus entirely on his work without constantly looking up to check on the boys. It was a strange and liberating feeling, knowing they were being watched by someone capable and trustworthy. The plow cut through the rich soil in clean furrows, and Darren found himself working faster than he had since Martha died, his mind finally free to focus on the task at hand. Around midday, he returned to the house to find an astonishing scene. Greshka sat on the porch with Samuel in her lap, reading to him from the primer Martha had used to teach Owen his letters. Owen sat beside them, listening intently, and all three looked up when Darren approached. "Papa," Samuel called out. Greshka knows all the letters. She can read better than Owen. I can read fine, Owen protested, but he was smiling. Greshka just knows bigger words. I had a good teacher when I was young, Greshka said quietly, her hand resting gently on Samuel's head. An old orc woman who believed knowledge was as important as strength. Darren felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the spring sunshine. That is good. Keep practicing, boys. I am going to make some lunch, and then I need to get back to the field. He prepared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and cold meat, and they ate together on the porch, enjoying the mild weather. The boys chattered about the games Greshka had taught them, orc games with names Darren could barely pronounce, and Greshka listened to their excited recounting with obvious pleasure. "They are good boys," she said to Darren when the children ran off to play in the yard. "You have raised them well." "Their mother deserves most of the credit," Darren replied, his voice catching slightly. "I am just trying to carry on what she started." "She would be proud," Greshka said simply, and somehow those 3 words meant more than any of the elaborate condolences his neighbors had offered. The days fell into a rhythm that felt almost natural. Darren worked the fields from dawn until dusk, plowing and planting with an efficiency he had not managed in months. Greshka, despite her injured arm, kept the boys occupied and safe, teaching them games and stories, helping with simple chores, and slowly becoming a fixture in their small household. In the evenings, after the boys were asleep, Darren and Greshka would sit by the fire and talk. She told him about orc culture, about the harsh beauty of the mountain strongholds and the rigid codes of honor that governed her people. He told her about farming, about the cycles of planting and harvest, and about the dreams he and Martha had shared for expanding their land. "You miss it?" Darren asked one evening about 2 weeks after Greshka's arrival. "Your clan." Greshka was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "I miss what I thought they were," she said finally. "I miss believing that strength and honor meant protecting the weak, not preying on them. But the clan I thought I belonged to never really existed, so no, I do not miss them." "What will you do?" Darren asked. "When your arm heals." Greshka turned to look at him, her dark eyes reflecting the firelight. "I do not know. I had thought I would move on, find some quiet place to live alone. But being here with you and the boys, I have remembered what it feels like to be part of something, to matter to someone." "You do matter," Darren said quietly, "to all of us. The boys adore you and I." He trailed off, suddenly aware of how true his next words were. "I do not know what I would do without you now." Greshka's expression softened. "Darren, you know this cannot last forever. Someone will eventually see me, or your neighbors will come to visit, and then everything you have built here will be at risk." "Then we will be careful," Darren replied stubbornly. "You can stay out of sight when people come around. It is not perfect, but it is a risk you should not have to take," Greshka interrupted gently. "You have been kinder to me than anyone in my entire life, human or orc. I will not repay that kindness by bringing danger to your door." "What if I want you to stay?" Darren asked, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "Not just until you heal, but longer, permanently." Greshka's eyes widened. "Darren, you do not know what you are saying." "I know exactly what I am saying," Darren insisted. "You are good with the boys, you work hard, and you have made this house feel like a home again instead of just a place we sleep. Why should you leave if you do not want to?" "Because I am an orc," Greshka said, her voice strained. "Because your people will never accept me, and because the longer I stay, the more attached we all become, and the harder it will be when I have to go." "What if you do not have to go?" Darren pressed. "What if we find a way to make this work?" Greshka stood abruptly, pacing to the window and staring out into the darkness. "There is no way to make this work, Darren. Even if your neighbors somehow accepted my presence, which they would not, what kind of life would that be? Always hiding, always afraid of discovery. Your sons deserve better than that. My sons deserve to have someone who cares about them, Darren said, standing and moving to stand beside her. Someone who teaches them and protects them and makes them laugh. Someone like you. Greshka turned to face him, and in the moonlight streaming through the window, he could see tears glistening on her cheeks. "Do not do this," she whispered. "Do not make me hope for something impossible." "Why is it impossible?" Darren asked. "Because some people are too narrow-minded to see past your green skin. Because ancient prejudices say we cannot be friends, cannot be family." "Family," Greshka repeated, her voice breaking on the word. "Darren, I am a warrior without a clan, an exile with nothing to offer. You are asking me to be part of your family when I do not even know how to be part of a family anymore." "Then learn with us," Darren said, reaching out to gently wipe a tear from her cheek. "We are all learning how to be a family without Martha. Maybe we can learn together." Greshka closed her eyes, leaning into his touch for just a moment before stepping back. "I need to think," she said. "This is too important to decide in a moment of emotion." "Take all the time you need," Darren replied. "I am not going anywhere, and neither should you." That night, Darren lay awake in the loft, listening to the sounds of Greshka moving quietly below. He had not planned to offer her a permanent place in their lives, but now that the words were spoken, he could not imagine taking them back. The truth was, Greshka had become essential to their household in a remarkably short time, and the thought of her leaving filled him with a dread he had not expected. He was still awake when the first rays of dawn began to lighten the sky, and he was pulling on his boots when he heard Greshka climbing the ladder to the loft. "Darren," she called softly, not wanting to wake the boys. "I am here," he replied, moving to meet her at the top of the ladder. In the gray morning light, Greshka looked uncertain, vulnerable in a way he had never seen her. "I have been thinking all night," she said, "about what you said about staying." "And," Darren prompted, his heart hammering in his chest. "I want to stay," Greshka said quietly. "More than I have ever wanted anything. But I need you to understand the risks. If anyone finds out you are harboring an orc, they could take your farm, imprison you, or worse. Your sons could be taken away and given to another family. I cannot be the reason you lose everything." "You will not be," Darren said firmly. "We will be careful, and if it comes down to it, I will stand before anyone and declare that you are under my protection, that you are part of this household." "They will not listen," Greshka said. "They will see only what they want to see, a monster who has deceived you." "Then I will make them see the truth," Darren replied. "But I do not think it will come to that. We are isolated here, and people respect a man's right to run his own property as he sees fit. As long as we are discreet, I think we will be fine." Greshka searched his face, looking for doubt or hesitation. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. "Then I will stay, for as long as you will have me." Relief flooded through Darren, so intense it left him momentarily breathless. "Thank you," he managed. "You will not regret this, I promise." "I know I will not," Greshka said softly. "This is the first real home I have had since I was a child. I will do everything in my power to protect it and the people in it." They stood there for a moment, the promise hanging between them like something solid and real, before Samuel's sleepy voice interrupted. "Is it morning already?" "Yes, little one," Greshka said, moving to the bed and ruffling Samuel's hair. "Time to wake up and start the day." As spring deepened into early summer, life on the Thorne farm settled into a comfortable routine. Darren worked the fields with renewed vigor, secure in the knowledge that his sons were safe and cared for. Greshka's arm healed well, and she began taking on more physical tasks around the farm, splitting wood with impressive efficiency and repairing the barn roof that had been leaking for months. The boys flourished under her care. Owen's reading improved dramatically, and Samuel learned to count to 100 in both Common and Orcish. They followed Greshka around like devoted puppies, peppering her with questions and demanding stories about her adventures before she came to the farm. Darren found himself watching Greshka more and more, noticing little things he had missed before. The way she hummed while working, a low, rumbling sound that was oddly soothing. The gentle patience she showed when Samuel asked the same question for the 10th time. The fierce protectiveness in her eyes whenever she thought the boys might be in danger. He also noticed the way his heart would skip when she smiled at him over the breakfast table, or how the farmhouse felt cold and empty on the rare occasions when she took the boys on walks through the woods. These feelings confused and frightened him, because they reminded him of how he had felt when he first met Martha, and it seemed wrong somehow to feel that way about anyone else. But Martha was gone, and Greshka was here, and Darren found himself wondering if perhaps there was room in his heart for both memories and new beginnings. One evening in late May, about 6 weeks after Greshka had arrived, Darren was teaching her to play checkers while the boys slept upstairs. She was picking up the game quickly, her strategic mind adapting to the rules with ease. "Check," she said, moving her piece with a satisfied smile. "That is checkers, not chess," Darren corrected with a laugh. "And I think you mean jump, not check." "The terminology is confusing," Greshka complained, but she was smiling. "Why do humans need so many different games when they all involve moving pieces on a board?" "Variety is the spice of life," Darren replied, making his own move. "Though I suppose in orc culture you have your own games." "We have tests of strength mostly," Greshka said. "Wrestling, spear throwing, endurance challenges. Games of strategy exist, but they are considered less important than physical prowess." "That seems limiting," Darren observed. "It is," Greshka agreed. "I always preferred the strategy games, which was another mark against me in my clan. They said I thought too much and acted too little." "I think you act plenty when it matters," Darren said, remembering the story she had told him about defying her clan leaders to protect the human child. "What happened to the child, by the way, the one you saved?" Greshka's expression grew distant. "I do not know. I got him away from the raid and pointed him toward the nearest human settlement, then I ran before my clan could catch me. I like to think he made it home safely." "I am sure he did," Darren said softly. "Thanks to you." They played in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the soft click of checker pieces on the board. Darren was considering his next move when Greshka spoke again, her voice hesitant. "Darren, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course," he replied, looking up from the board. "You ever think about marrying again?" Greshka asked, not meeting his eyes. "The boys need a mother, and you should not have to manage everything alone." The question caught Darren off guard. "I have thought about it," he admitted, "but it feels disloyal somehow, like I would be replacing Martha." "You could never replace her," Greshka said gently. "She was the boys' mother, and she will always hold that place in their hearts and yours. But that does not mean there is no room for someone else, someone who could love them and you in a different way." "Is there someone you think I should consider?" Darren asked, curious about where this conversation was heading. Greshka finally looked at him, and there was something raw and vulnerable in her expression. "I think you should consider whoever makes you happy, whoever makes this house feel like a home, even if that person is not what everyone expects." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Darren's heart began to race as he realized what Greshka was really asking, what she was really saying. "Greshka," he began, but she held up a hand. "You do not have to say anything," she said quickly. I should not have brought it up. It was inappropriate. It was not inappropriate, Darren interrupted, reaching across the checkerboard to take her hand. Her skin was warm and rough with calluses, the hand of someone who had worked hard all her life. Greshka, these past weeks with you here have been the happiest I have been since Martha died. You have brought light back into this house, and not just for the boys, for me too. Greshka's eyes widened. Darren, I am an orc. Even if you have feelings for me, even if I have feelings for you, there is no future in it. Humans and orcs do not marry. It is not done. Why not? Darren asked. Who made that rule, and why should we follow it? Society made that rule, Greshka replied. Centuries of war and mistrust and hatred. You cannot simply ignore all of that because of personal feelings. Why not? Darren repeated. Greshka, I do not care what society says. I care about you, about the way you make my sons laugh, about the way you have turned this struggling farm into a thriving home. I care about the fact that you are brave and kind and stronger than anyone I have ever met. Is it really so impossible to imagine that I could love you? Greshka pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. Do not say that word, she whispered. Do not say love when you do not understand what it would cost you. If people knew, if they even suspected that you cared for me as more than a servant, they would destroy you. They would take your farm, your children, everything you have worked for. I will not let that happen. It will not happen, Darren said, standing to face her. We are careful, and we will continue to be careful, but I cannot pretend that I do not feel what I feel, and I do not think you can either. Greshka turned away, her shoulders shaking. I cannot do this, Darren. I cannot let myself hope for something so impossible. It will only lead to heartbreak. Then let it, Darren said softly, moving to stand behind her. He did not touch her, but he was close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her body. Let yourself hope, let yourself feel, let yourself have something good after everything you have been through. You deserve that, Greshka. You deserve to be happy. Greshka turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. What if I cannot make you happy? What if I am too different, too damaged by everything I have seen and done? You already make me happy, Darren replied, reaching up to gently cup her face. Every day you are here, you make me happy. And you are not damaged, Greshka. You are strong and brave and wonderful, and I would be honored if you would let me love you. For a long moment, Greshka simply stared at him, her expression cycling through disbelief, fear, and finally, tentative joy. Then slowly, she leaned down and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture he remembered her saying was a sign of deep affection among orcs. I do not know how to do this, she whispered. I have never been in love before. Neither have I, Darren admitted. Well, not since Martha, and that was a lifetime ago. We can figure it out together. They stood there, foreheads pressed together, breathing in sync until the fire burned low and the night grew deep around them. When they finally pulled apart, Greshka was smiling, a real genuine smile that lit up her entire face. I will stay, she said. Not as a servant or a helper, but as part of this family, if you truly want me. I truly want you, Darren confirmed, more than I can express. Then I am yours, Greshka said simply, and Darren felt his heart swell with an emotion so powerful it nearly knocked him off his feet. They did not kiss that night. It felt too soon, too fast, despite the feelings they had just confessed. Instead, they sat by the fire and talked until dawn, making quiet plans for the future and learning the shape of this new thing growing between them. The next morning, Owen noticed something had changed immediately. Why are you both smiling so much? He asked suspiciously over breakfast. Can we not smile? Darren asked, unable to wipe the grin off his face. You can, Owen replied, but you are smiling like Samuel does when he sneaks extra honey on his bread. I do not sneak extra honey, Samuel protested. I just forget to ask first. Greshka laughed, the sound bright and unrestrained. Maybe we are just happy, Owen. Is that so strange? I guess not, Owen conceded. I am happy too. I like it when everyone is happy. Me too, Samuel agreed. Can we go fishing today? Greshka promised to teach me how orcs fish. Did she now? Darren asked, raising an eyebrow at Greshka. I may have mentioned that orcs sometimes catch fish with their bare hands, Greshka admitted, and Samuel seemed interested in learning. Please, Papa, Samuel begged. I promise I will not fall in the creek like last time, Darren considered. The planting was mostly done, and the crops would not need serious attention for another few weeks. A day of rest and fun sounded appealing, especially now that the heavy burden of worry he had been carrying for months had finally lifted. All right, he agreed, and both boys cheered. But everyone wears boots, and no one goes in water deeper than their knees. Understood. Understood, they chorused. They spent the day at the creek, and Darren watched with amusement as Greshka tried to teach the boys the art of hand fishing. She was patient and encouraging, even when Samuel scared away every fish within 50 feet with his enthusiastic splashing. Owen managed to catch a small trout, and his pride was so evident that Darren felt his eyes sting with happy tears. This, he thought, was what family was supposed to feel like. Not the grief-stricken struggle of the past 6 months, but this easy joy, this sense of belonging and togetherness. That night, after the boys were asleep, Darren and Greshka sat on the porch and watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. I have been thinking, Greshka said quietly, about what we discussed last night. And, Darren prompted, taking her hand in his. I want this to work, Greshka said, but we need to be realistic about the challenges. Eventually, someone will see me. Eventually, questions will be asked. We need a plan for how to handle that. What do you suggest? Darren asked. I think we should tell people I am a traveling laborer you hired to help with the farm, Greshka said. It is close enough to the truth that it will not feel like a complete lie, and it explains my presence without raising too many questions. And when they see that you are an orc, Darren asked, then you tell them that you do not care about my race, only about my work, Greshka replied. It will cause talk, but talk is not the same as action. As long as I do not cause trouble and you maintain your reputation as a solid, respectable farmer, I think most people will eventually accept it, even if they do not like it. What about us? Darren asked softly. How do we explain that if it comes to it? Greshka was quiet for a long moment. I do not know if we can explain that, she said finally. The idea of a human and an orc being together romantically, that is a step too far for most people. I think we would have to keep that part private, at least for now. Darren felt a flash of frustration. So we hide. We pretend we are just employer and employee. We protect what we have, Greshka corrected gently. Darren, I want nothing more than to proclaim my feelings for you from the rooftops, but I will not risk your safety or your son's futures for my own pride. If keeping our relationship private means we all stay together and safe, then that is what we do. Darren knew she was right, even as it chafed against his sense of honesty. All right, he agreed reluctantly. We keep it private for now. But Greshka, I want you to know that I am not ashamed of you or my feelings for you. If circumstances were different, I know, Greshka interrupted, squeezing his hand. I know, and that is enough for me. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars and listening to the night sounds of the farm. Eventually, Darren spoke again. My neighbors will probably visit soon, he said. The Hendersons usually come around in early June to trade seeds and news. We should prepare for that. What should I do when they come? Greshka asked. Be yourself, Darren replied. Be polite and respectful, but do not try to hide what you are. If we act like there is nothing unusual about your presence, they are more likely to accept it." "And if they do not accept it?" Greshka asked. "Then I will deal with it," Darren said firmly. "You are part of this household now, and I will not let anyone make you feel unwelcome or unsafe." Greshka leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture of trust and affection that made Darren's heart race. "How did I get so lucky?" she murmured. "To find you in this place. I think I am the lucky one," Darren replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head without thinking. They both froze at the gesture, the first real romantic contact between them, and then Greshka lifted her head to look at him. "Can you do that again?" she asked softly. Darren kissed her forehead, her temple, the corner of her eye. Greshka's breath hitched, and she turned her face so that their lips met. The kiss was gentle and tentative, both of them learning the shape of something new and precious. When they pulled apart, Greshka was smiling. "That was nice," she said, and Darren laughed at the understatement. "Yes," he agreed. "It was very nice." They kissed again, longer this time, and when they finally went inside to sleep, Darren felt like he was floating. The Henderson family arrived on a warm Tuesday afternoon in early June, their wagon loaded with supplies, and their 3 teenage children looking bored and restless. Darren heard them coming and quickly found Greshka, who was in the garden with the boys. "They are here," he said, and Greshka nodded, her expression calm but her eyes showing her nervousness. "I will stay out here with the boys," she said. "Let them see me naturally, not like I am hiding." Darren squeezed her shoulder briefly, a gesture of support, and went to greet his neighbors. Matthew Henderson was a solid man in his 40s, with the weathered face of someone who had spent his whole life working outdoors. His wife Sarah was a practical woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. They climbed down from the wagon with smiles and greetings, and Darren returned them as naturally as he could. "Good to see you, Darren," Matthew said, shaking his hand firmly. "Farm is looking good. You have been busy." "I have had some help," Darren replied, gesturing toward the garden where Greshka stood with Owen and Samuel. "Let me introduce you to Greshka. She is a laborer I hired to help with the planting season." He saw the exact moment they realized Greshka was an orc. Sarah's eyes widened and Matthew's hand moved instinctively toward the knife at his belt before he caught himself. "An orc," Sarah said, her voice sharp with alarm. "Darren, what are you thinking?" "I am thinking that I needed help and Greshka needed work," Darren said calmly. "She has been invaluable to me and wonderful with the boys." "With your boys?" Matthew said incredulously. "Darren, orcs are dangerous. Everyone knows that." "Greshka is not dangerous," Darren said firmly. "She is kind and hardworking, and she has been nothing but helpful since she arrived. I would trust her with my life." Greshka had heard enough of the conversation to know she needed to act. She approached slowly, her hands visible and her posture non-threatening, with Owen and Samuel trailing behind her. "Good afternoon," she said politely. "I am Greshka." "It is a pleasure to meet Darren's neighbors." Sarah stared at her, speechless, but Matthew managed to nod. "Matthew Henderson," he said stiffly. "This is my wife Sarah and our children." "Your farm is beautiful," Greshka continued, as though she could not sense the tension. "Darren has told me you are excellent at breeding the new variety of wheat that is resistant to blight. I would love to learn more about your techniques." The mention of farming seemed to break through Matthew's alarm. "You know about farming?" he asked, surprised. "Some," Greshka replied. "Orcs grow crops in the mountains, though our methods are different from lowland farming. I am always eager to learn new approaches." "She has been helping me improve the irrigation in the south field," Darren added. "The crop yield has already improved." Matthew looked between Darren and Greshka, clearly struggling to reconcile his preconceptions about orcs with the polite, knowledgeable woman standing before him. "Well," he said finally, "I suppose if Darren trusts you, that says something." It was not a warm welcome, but it was not a rejection either. Darren felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. Sarah, however, was not ready to let it go. "Can I speak with you privately, Darren?" she asked, her tone making it clear this was not really a question. "Of course," Darren agreed. "Greshka, would you mind showing the Henderson children the new foals in the barn? I think they would enjoy that." Greshka nodded, understanding that Darren needed to handle this alone. "Owen, Samuel, why don't you come help me?" she said, and the boys eagerly agreed, pulling the reluctant Henderson teenagers toward the barn once they were out of earshot. Sarah turned to Darren with fury in her eyes. "Have you lost your mind?" she hissed. "An orc, Darren, living in your house with your children." "She is not just an orc," Darren replied, keeping his voice calm. "She is a person who needed help, and she has given me more help in return than I could have hoped for. The boys love her, and she has made managing this farm possible again." "But what will people say?" Sarah demanded. "What will they think?" "I do not care what they think," Darren said bluntly. "Sarah, I have been drowning since Martha died. I could not keep the boys safe and work the farm at the same time. Greshka changed that. She saved me, and I will not turn her away just because some people are too narrow-minded to see past her green skin." Matthew, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Is she really good with the boys?" he asked. "She is wonderful with them," Darren said honestly. "She teaches them, protects them, and cares for them like they were her own. Owen's reading has improved so much that he is already starting on books meant for children twice his age. Samuel has stopped having nightmares about losing his mother. That is all Greshka's doing." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "They do look happy," she admitted grudgingly. "Happier than they have been since Martha passed." "They are," Darren confirmed. "And so am I. Please, I am not asking you to understand, just to accept it. Greshka will not cause trouble, and she is not a danger to anyone. Can you give her a chance?" Matthew and Sarah exchanged a long look, the kind of wordless communication that came from years of marriage. Finally, Matthew nodded. "We will give her a chance," he said. "But Darren, you need to understand that not everyone will be as open-minded. Some folks will cause real trouble over this." "I know," Darren said, "but I am willing to face that if it means keeping Greshka and my sons safe and happy." Sarah sighed. "You always were stubborn, Darren Thorne." "I just hope you know what you are doing." "I do," Darren said with more confidence than he felt. When they all gathered for the customary exchange of seeds and news, the atmosphere was strained but not hostile. Greshka stayed quiet, answering when spoken to but not pushing herself forward. The Henderson children, after their initial wariness, seemed charmed by her stories about the mountains and her patient answers to their questions. As the Hendersons prepared to leave, Matthew pulled Darren aside. "She seems decent enough," he admitted, "but you need to be prepared for backlash. Not everyone will be as understanding as Sarah and me." "I appreciate the warning," Darren said, "and thank you for giving her a chance." "Thank you for the seeds," Matthew replied with a faint smile. "And Darren, if you need help, if things get difficult, you send word. We may not understand your choices, but you are still our neighbor and we look after our own." The words warmed Darren more than he could express. "Thank you, Matthew. That means a lot." After the Hendersons left, Greshka found Darren in the barn. "How bad was it?" she asked. "Not as bad as it could have been," Darren replied honestly. "They are not happy about it, but they are willing to accept you. That is more than I expected." "Sarah hates me," Greshka observed. "Sarah is protective and suspicious of anything new," Darren corrected. "Give her time." Once she sees that you are not a threat, she will come around." "I hope you are right," Greshka said, "for your sake more than mine." Summer settled over the farm like a warm blanket, and the crops grew thick and green in the fields. Darren's wheat was the healthiest it had been in years, and he knew it was due in large part to Greshka's suggestions about irrigation and soil management. The boys grew brown and strong from days spent outdoors, learning to tend the garden and care for the animals under Greshka's patient instruction. Word of the orc woman working at the Thorne farm spread through the settlement, and reactions were mixed. Some people, like the Hendersons, were willing to give her a chance. Others muttered darkly about monsters and warned that Darren was courting disaster. A few, thankfully only a few, talked about organizing a group to drive Greshka away by force. Darren heard all the talk and ignored it as best he could. He was too busy and too happy to care what narrow-minded people thought. His farm was thriving, his sons were happy, and every day he spent with Greshka only deepened his feelings for her. They kept their romantic relationship carefully hidden from prying eyes, but within the privacy of their own home, they let themselves be open with their affection. They held hands while walking through the fields after the boys were asleep, stole kisses in the barn when no one was looking, and talked long into the night about their hopes and dreams. One evening in late July, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the darkness, Greshka brought up a subject they had been avoiding. "Darren, we need to talk about the future," she said quietly. "What about it?" Darren asked, though he had a feeling he knew where this was going. "This arrangement, it cannot stay like this forever," Greshka said. "I am supposed to be a hired laborer, which means eventually you should let me go or the other farmers will start to wonder. But I do not want to leave, and I do not think you want me to either." "I do not," Darren confirmed. "Greshka, I love you. I want you to stay for the rest of our lives, not just until the harvest is done." Greshka smiled, but there was sadness in it. "I love you too. But how do we make that work? If I stay indefinitely as a laborer, people will talk. And we cannot reveal our true relationship without inviting serious trouble." Darren had been thinking about this problem for weeks, and he had come to a conclusion that both excited and terrified him. "What if we got married?" he asked. Greshka's eyes widened in shock. "Married?" "Darren, I am an orc. I am not even sure it would be legal for us to marry, even if we found someone willing to perform the ceremony." "Then we have a hand-fasting," Darren said, referring to the old custom of binding two people together in a marriage recognized by their community, if not by law. "We do not need a priest or a legal document to make a commitment to each other. We just need to declare our intention to be together and ask our friends to witness it." "Who would witness it?" Greshka asked practically. "Who would attend a wedding between a human and an orc?" "The Hendersons might," Darren said. "They have warmed to you quite a bit, and there are a few other neighbors who seem sympathetic. It would not be a big ceremony, but it would be real." Greshka was quiet for a long time, and Darren could see her working through the implications. "If we did this," she said finally, "if we made our relationship public like that, there would be no going back. You would be declaring to everyone that you chose an orc as your wife. The backlash could be severe." "I know," Darren said, "but Greshka, I am tired of hiding. I am tired of pretending that you are just a hired hand when you are so much more than that. You are my partner, my love, and the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. I want everyone to know that." Tears welled up in Greshka's eyes. "Are you sure? Are you absolutely certain this is what you want?" "I have never been more sure of anything," Darren replied, taking both her hands in his. "Greshka, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and a mother to my boys?" Greshka let out a sob that was half laugh, half cry. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you. You ridiculous, wonderful man." Darren pulled her into his arms, and they held each other as the fireflies danced around them, and the summer night sang with crickets and tree frogs. The next morning, Darren told the boys about his plan. They were eating breakfast when he cleared his throat and said, "Boys, I have something important to discuss with you." Owen and Samuel looked up from their porridge with matching expressions of curiosity. "I have asked Greshka to marry me," Darren said. "If she agrees, she will become my wife and your stepmother. How do you feel about that?" There was a moment of silence, and then Samuel launched himself at Greshka with a delighted shout. "You are going to be our new mama." Greshka caught him easily, her eyes filling with tears. "If you will have me, yes. Of course we will have you," Samuel exclaimed. "Right, Owen?" Owen was quieter, his expression thoughtful. "What about Mama?" he asked. "Our real Mama," Darren's heart clenched. "Your Mama will always be your Mama," he said gently. "Nothing and no one can change that. But she is gone, and Greshka is here, and she loves you both very much. She will not replace your Mama, but she can be another person who loves you and takes care of you. Is that all right?" Owen considered this for a long moment, then nodded. "Mama would want us to be happy," he said with the wisdom of a child who had thought deeply about loss. "And Greshka makes us happy. So yes, it is all right." Greshka was openly crying now, and she pulled Owen into the embrace with Samuel. "I promise I will take care of you both," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I promise I will love you and protect you and be the best mother I can be." "We know," Owen said, patting her arm awkwardly. "You already do." Planning the handfasting proved to be both easier and harder than Darren expected. When he approached Matthew and Sarah Henderson about attending, they were initially shocked, but Matthew ultimately agreed. "You are a grown man, Darren, and you have the right to make your own choices," Matthew said. "I do not pretend to understand this, but I can see that you care for each other, and I suppose that counts for something." Sarah was less enthusiastic, but she did not refuse outright. "I will come," she said finally. "But Darren, you need to prepare yourself for the consequences. There are people who will not accept this, no matter what you say or do." "I know," Darren replied, "but I would rather face those consequences with Greshka at my side than live safely without her." Word of the upcoming handfasting spread quickly through the settlement, and the reactions were even more extreme than Darren had anticipated. Some people expressed cautious support, saying that if Darren was happy, that was his business. Others were openly hostile, calling Greshka a monster and Darren a traitor to his own kind. 3 days before the planned ceremony, a group of men showed up at Darren's farm. There were 5 of them, all farmers or tradesmen Darren knew by name, and their faces were set in grim determination. "We need to talk, Thorne," their leader, a burly man named Jacob, announced. "Then talk," Darren replied, positioning himself between the men and his house, where Greshka had taken the boys inside at the first sign of trouble. "This handfasting cannot happen," Jacob said bluntly. "It is an abomination. Humans do not marry orcs." "Why not?" Darren challenged. "Because of some old prejudice that no one even questions anymore. Because orcs look different from us. Because orcs are dangerous," another man, Peter, spoke up. "They raid our villages, kill our people. You are asking us to accept one of them as your wife, as a mother to human children. It is wrong." "Greshka has never raided a village in her life," Darren said firmly. "She was cast out of her clan for refusing to harm a human child. She is gentle and kind, and she has been nothing but good to me and my sons. You are judging her based on what other orcs have done, not on who she actually is." "We are judging her based on what she is," Jacob said. "A monster." The word hung in the air like a curse, and Darren felt his temper flare. "Get off my land," he said, his voice cold. "Now, or what?" Jacob challenged. You will have your orc girlfriend defend you. I will defend myself and my family, Darren replied. And Greshka is part of my family, whether you like it or not. Now leave before I make you leave. The men exchanged glances, clearly not having expected this level of resistance. Jacob opened his mouth to argue further, but at that moment, Greshka stepped out of the house. She was not armed, but her posture was that of a warrior, and even unarmed, she was intimidating. If you have a problem with me, address it to my face, she said, her voice calm but firm. Do not hide behind threats to the man I love. See, Peter said, pointing at her. She even admits she does not belong here. This is not natural. What is not natural is a group of men coming to someone's home to threaten them for daring to love someone different, Greshka replied. Darren has done nothing wrong. I have done nothing wrong. We simply want to build a life together. Why does that threaten you so much? Jacob's face reddened. Because it is wrong, he repeated, but there was less conviction in his voice now. Why? Greshka pressed. Because your parents told you orcs were monsters, because stories painted us as villains. I am standing here, talking to you like a person, because that is what I am. I bleed, I cry, I love, just like you do. The only difference between us is the color of our skin and the shape of our teeth. Is that really enough to justify this hatred? The men were silent, shifting uncomfortably. Darren could see doubt creeping into some of their expressions, though Jacob remained stubbornly hostile. This conversation is over, Darren said firmly. You have said your piece, and I have listened. Now I am telling you that the handfasting will proceed as planned. You do not have to attend, you do not have to approve, but you will not interfere. Is that clear? For a moment, it seemed like Jacob might argue further, but one of the other men, a younger farmer named Thomas, spoke up. Let it go, Jacob. This is Thorne's business, not ours. Jacob glared at Thomas, but he finally nodded. Fine, he said. Have your abomination of a wedding, but do not expect any support from us when things go wrong. I do not need your support, Darren replied, just your absence. The men left, and Darren let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Greshka came to stand beside him, and he took her hand. That went better than I expected, she said wryly. Better? Darren asked. They called our relationship an abomination. True, but they left without violence, Greshka pointed out. I count that as a win. Despite the opposition, the handfasting took place on a warm August afternoon. The ceremony was held in the meadow behind Darren's house, with wildflowers blooming all around and a clear blue sky overhead. The attendance was small but meaningful. The Henderson family, a few sympathetic neighbors, and a traveling priest who agreed to bless the union despite his personal reservations. Owen and Samuel stood beside Darren, dressed in their best clothes and beaming with excitement. Greshka wore a simple dress that Sarah Henderson had helped her make, the first dress she had ever owned, and her dark hair was woven with flowers. The priest, an elderly man named Father Benedict, led them through the traditional handfasting ceremony. Darren and Greshka clasped hands while a ribbon was tied around their wrists, binding them together symbolically. Do you, Darren Thorne, take this woman Greshka to be your wife, to love and honor from this day forward? Father Benedict asked. I do, Darren said, his voice strong and clear. With all my heart, I do. And do you, Greshka, take this man, Darren Thorne, to be your husband, to love and honor from this day forward? I do, Greshka replied, tears streaming down her face. I will love him and his sons for as long as I draw breath. Then by the power vested in me, and witnessed by those gathered here, I declare you bound together in the sight of God and community. May your life together be filled with love, joy, and understanding. The small gathering applauded, and Darren leaned in to kiss his wife for the first time as a married couple. Greshka kissed him back with all the love and hope she had been holding inside, and when they pulled apart, both were smiling through their tears. Owen and Samuel rushed forward to hug them both, and Matthew Henderson stepped up to shake Darren's hand. "Congratulations," Matthew said gruffly. "I hope you will both be very happy." "Thank you for being here," Darren replied sincerely. "It means more than you know." The celebration that followed was simple but joyful. Sarah had brought food, and they all shared a meal in the meadow while the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Owen and Samuel showed off the tricks Greshka had taught them, and even the Henderson children joined in the games. As the evening drew to a close and their guests began to depart, Sarah pulled Greshka aside. "I was wrong about you," she said abruptly. "When Darren first told me about you, I thought he had lost his mind. But I have been watching you today, and I can see how much you love him and those boys. You are a good woman, Greshka, orc or not." Greshka felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you, Sarah. That means a great deal to me." "You take care of them," Sarah said. "And if you ever need anything, if those fools who oppose this wedding try to cause trouble, you send word. You are part of this community now, whether everyone likes it or not." That night, after the boys were asleep and the dishes were washed, Darren and Greshka sat together on their bed, still wearing the ribbons from their hand-fasting ceremony. "We did it," Greshka said wonderingly. "We are actually married." "We are," Darren confirmed, pulling her close. "You are my wife, Greshka Thorne." "I like the sound of that," Greshka murmured. "Wife, mother, part of a family." "You have always been part of this family," Darren said, kissing her temple. "Today we just made it official." They made love that night for the first time, learning each other's bodies with gentle care and growing passion. It was awkward in places, sweet in others, and perfect in the way that truly mattered. When they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, both wore smiles of complete contentment. The weeks following the hand-fasting brought challenges, as Sarah had warned. A few people refused to do business with Darren, and there were mutterings about bringing the matter before the settlement council. But there were also unexpected sources of support. Old Widow Brennan, who lived on the far edge of the settlement, brought Greshka a basket of preserves and told her she admired her courage. A young couple, newly married themselves, stopped by to say they thought love was love, regardless of species. Slowly, grudgingly, the settlement began to accept the reality of Darren and Greshka's marriage. It helped that Greshka made a point of being helpful and friendly to anyone who would allow it. She helped Sarah Henderson with a difficult lambing, taught old Thomas how to treat blight in his apple trees, and once pulled young Mary out of a well when the girl had leaned too far over the edge, reaching for her dropped bucket. By the time harvest season arrived, Greshka was no longer that orc woman but Darren's wife, or simply Greshka, and the distinction mattered more than Darren had expected. The harvest that year was the best Darren had ever had. The wheat came in thick and golden. The vegetables from the garden were plentiful and healthy, and even the orchard produced more fruit than he knew what to do with. As he worked alongside Greshka to bring in the crops, with Owen and Samuel helping as much as two young boys could, Darren felt a profound sense of gratitude for how far they had come. One evening, as they all sat down to dinner after a long day of harvesting, Samuel suddenly announced, "I told the Henderson boys today that Greshka is the best mama in the whole world." Greshka froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "You called me mama?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Is that okay?" Samuel asked, suddenly uncertain. "You said you were going to be our new mama, and you do all the mama things, so I thought it was okay." "It is more than okay," Greshka said, tears filling her eyes. "It is the greatest honor I have ever received." Owen, who had been quieter about the transition, spoke up. I have been calling you Mama Greshka in my head, he admitted, to tell you apart from Mama Martha. Is that all right? That is perfect, Greshka replied, reaching across the table to take both boys' hands. You can call me whatever feels right to you. Greshka, Mama Greshka, I do not care. All that matters is that we are a family. We are a family, Owen agreed. A weird one maybe, but a good one. The best one, Samuel insisted, and they all laughed. As autumn deepened and the days grew shorter, Darren found himself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past several months. He had started the year as a desperate widower, struggling to manage his farm and raise his sons alone. Now he had a thriving farm, happy children, and a wife he loved more than he had thought possible to love again. One night in late October, as the first frost touched the fields, Greshka came to him with news that would change everything once more. Darren, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I think I am with child. Darren stared at her in shock. Truly, I am not certain, Greshka admitted, but all the signs are there. I have been feeling ill in the mornings and my body feels different. I think we are going to have a baby. Darren whooped with joy and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. A baby, he repeated, still unable to fully process it. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy? Greshka asked, suddenly vulnerable. I know this complicates things. A child of mixed blood will face prejudice that Owen and Samuel never will. I am thrilled, Darren said firmly. And yes, our child will face challenges, but they will also have a family who loves them and will fight for them. That is more than many people have. Greshka relaxed into his embrace. I hope it is a girl, she said softly. A strong, brave girl who grows up knowing she can be anything she wants to be. Girl or boy, they will be perfect, Darren replied, just like their mother. They told Owen and Samuel the next day, and the boys' reactions were priceless. Samuel was excited about the prospect of a baby sibling to play with, while Owen wanted to know all about the logistics of how babies with both human and orc heritage would look. Will they be green like Mama Greshka or pink like us? He asked with genuine curiosity. Probably somewhere in between, Greshka said with amusement. Maybe a light green or a grayish tone. We will not know until they are born. Will they have tusks? Samuel asked. Possibly small ones, Greshka replied. Half-orcs usually have features from both parents. The boys found this fascinating and spent the rest of the day speculating about their future siblings' appearance and personality. Winter arrived, and with it came a slowing of farm work and an increase in indoor activities. Darren used the time to make improvements to the house, adding a small room off the main bedroom that would serve as a nursery. Greshka, despite her growing belly, helped with the preparations, sewing tiny clothes and blankets with Sarah Henderson's assistance. Sarah had become an unexpected ally and friend, visiting regularly to check on Greshka's pregnancy and offer advice based on her own experiences as a mother. The two women formed a bond that transcended their different species, united by the common experience of carrying and raising children. You are going to be a wonderful mother, Sarah said one afternoon as they sat by the fire, working on baby clothes. You already are, really. The way you care for Owen and Samuel, it is beautiful to see. I never thought I would have this, Greshka confessed. A husband who loves me, children who call me mother, a child of my own growing inside me. In my clan I was considered too soft, too weak. Here I am valued for those same qualities. Then your clan was full of fools, Sarah said bluntly. Softness is not weakness. Gentleness is not a flaw. The world needs more people, orc and human alike, who choose kindness over cruelty. The winter months passed peacefully, and as spring returned to the land, so too did new life. Greshka went into labor on a warm April evening, and Sarah and old widow Brennan, who had experience as a midwife, attended the birth. Darren paced outside the bedroom with Owen and Samuel, listening to the sounds from within and trying not to panic. Childbirth was dangerous even under the best circumstances, and Greshka was giving birth to a child of mixed heritage, which added unknown complications. After what felt like an eternity but was actually only a few hours, Sarah emerged with a smile on her face. "You have a daughter," she announced. "A healthy, perfect daughter." Darren rushed into the room to find Greshka propped up in bed, exhausted but glowing with joy, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as he entered, and her smile could have lit the entire room. "Meet your daughter," she said softly, and Darren approached to get his first look at the baby. She was beautiful, with skin a delicate shade of pale green and a tuft of dark hair on her head. Her eyes, when she opened them, were a striking gray-blue, and when she yawned, he could see the tiniest hint of tusks beginning to form. "She is perfect," Darren breathed, gently touching one of her tiny hands. "Absolutely perfect." "What should we name her?" Greshka asked. They had discussed names during the pregnancy but had not settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his daughter's peaceful face, Darren knew exactly what felt right. "Martha," he said softly, "if you are all right with that." "To honor the woman who gave me Owen and Samuel, and to show that we carry her memory forward with love, not pain." Greshka's eyes filled with tears. "I would be honored," she said. "Martha Thorne, it is a beautiful name." Owen and Samuel were allowed in to meet their sister, and both were immediately smitten. Owen touched her hand gently, marveling at how tiny she was, while Samuel wanted to know when she would be big enough to play with. "Not for a while yet," Greshka said with amusement. "But when she is older, she will need big brothers to teach her and protect her. Can you do that?" "Yes," both boys promised solemnly, and Darren felt his heart swell with pride and love for his family. The news of baby Martha's birth spread quickly through the settlement, and reactions were mixed, as expected. Some people sent gifts and congratulations, willing to accept that the child was innocent regardless of her mixed heritage. Others muttered darkly about the abomination, and predicted the child would bring nothing but trouble. Darren ignored the negative voices and focused on his family. Martha grew quickly, thriving under the loving care of her parents and brothers. By the time summer arrived, she was smiling and reaching for toys, showing a personality that was curious and joyful. One warm June day, almost exactly a year after their handfasting, Darren and Greshka sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard. Owen was teaching Samuel to whittle while Martha lay on a blanket nearby, gurgling happily at the birds overhead. "Can you believe it has only been a year?" Greshka asked, leaning her head on Darren's shoulder. "It feels like you have been my husband forever." "The best year of my life," Darren replied, kissing the top of her head, "and we have so many more ahead of us." "Do you ever regret it?" Greshka asked quietly. "Marrying me, facing all the judgment and difficulty that came with it." Darren turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "Never," he said firmly. "Not for a single moment. Greshka, you saved me and my sons when we were drowning in grief and struggle. You brought love and light and hope back into our lives. I would face 1,000 times the judgment we have received for the privilege of calling you my wife." Greshka smiled through tears. "I love you, Darren Thorne." "I love you too, Greshka Thorne," he replied, and they kissed while their children played and the farm thrived around them. As the years passed, the Thorne family became an accepted, if still unusual, part of the settlement. Darren's farm continued to prosper, aided by Greshka's knowledge and hard work. Owen and Samuel grew into fine young men who defended their sister fiercely against any who dared speak against her mixed heritage. Little Martha grew into a bright, strong girl who had her mother's courage and her father's kindness. More families with mixed marriages followed the Thornes' example, and slowly, very slowly, the rigid prejudices that had divided humans and orcs for centuries began to soften. It was not a perfect world, and there were still those who clung to old hatreds, but it was better than it had been. On the 5th anniversary of their handfasting, Darren and Greshka stood in the same meadow where they had married, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Their children were with the Hendersons for the evening, giving them rare time alone together. "You remember what you said to me that first night?" Greshka asked. "When I was drinking from your horse trough and you invited me inside." "I said a lot of things that night," Darren replied with a smile. "Which part do you mean? You said you believe judging someone by what they are rather than who they are is a fool's game," Greshka recounted. "That one statement changed my entire life. It gave me hope when I had none." "I meant every word," Darren said. "And I still do. Who you are, Greshka, the woman who chose mercy over violence, who loves my sons like her own, who works beside me every day to build something beautiful. That is what matters, not your green skin or your tusks or your orc heritage." "You are a good man, Darren Thorne," Greshka said softly. "The best man I have ever known." "And you are the best woman I have ever known," Darren replied. "We are quite the pair, are we not?" They stood together as the sun set, two people from different worlds who had found in each other exactly what they needed. He had needed someone to watch his boys while he plowed the fields, someone to help carry the burden of maintaining the farm and raising children alone. She had needed a reason to stay, a purpose beyond mere survival, a place where she could be valued for her kindness rather than condemned for her perceived weakness. What they found together was so much more than either had sought. They found love, partnership, family, and a future filled with hope and possibility. And as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Darren and Greshka knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, bound not just by the ribbons of their handfasting ceremony, but by the deeper ties of love, respect, and unshakable commitment to each other, and the life they had built. Their story became one told around fires and dinner tables throughout the settlement, a reminder that love could bridge any divide, and that choosing to see the person rather than the prejudice could change the world, one family at a time. And in the years to come, when their children and grandchildren asked how it all began, Darren would smile and say it started with a simple act of kindness toward a stranger in need, and Greshka would add that it grew into the greatest love story she had ever known. The farm flourished, the family grew, and in the small corner of the world they called home, two people who should never have met, let alone loved, proved that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from having the courage to look beyond what everyone else sees and recognize the extraordinary potential in an ordinary moment of human and orc connection.